My name is Alyssa Nicoll, and I am walking through an application that I made in Ruby on Rails. Also, I use the gem mongoid, which is spelled like mongo with OID at the end, um, in order to plug into my Mongo database versus an active record database. It's just a super simple blog, and part of it is using the unobtrusive Ajax that we love and know with Rails. So I'm going to go ahead and go over parts of that. So first off, we have my website here. New post. We have the individual posts down here with their title, the name of the author, and the category. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate creating a new post, which is using Ajax. You click on it, it loads in the new post form without having to reload the page at the very top. Go ahead and fill it out. So my name is going to be the author of this post. Let's go ahead and make it fashion. We'll say dresses are in fashion this year. And then we'll have some lovely content about dresses and how they are in fashion this year. Go ahead and create the post, which then is also using Ajax to hide the form and insert at the very top of the page this post. So we can go ahead and delete it, which is, again, using the unobtrusive Ajax. It says, are you sure you want to delete this whale of a post? We are sure. And it slides out and deletes it. I accidentally made two. Okay, so now we're going to go over to La Code, and we're going to go into a few things. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, but also go through how this application is working. First, I'm going to talk about my models, which in Ruby, whenever you make a Rails app, you're going to go ahead inside your app, and you're going to open your models. Woo, it's very exciting. And I made two models, post and comment. And models basically are going to define objects that our application uses. So here we're defining the class of post, post being our object. And these two lines, obviously for mongoid, this one was specifically so that I could pass timestamps so that I know when the posts are created versus giving the users the option of filling that out. I think that it's always a little bit more honest if you go ahead and grab that just when it was created. So that's how I went ahead and did that with mongoid. The next 4 lines are obviously the fields that a post consists of. If you see this colon, this is a symbol, which in Rails is like a string, but there are just pointers to single spaces in memory. So it's much more, I guess, memory efficient than a variable. So these are all type of string. You can have different types, of course. And then this is a mongoid line, which allows us to have pseudo relationships in our Mongo database. So embeds many comments. This is pretty straightforward. We're saying that we're going to embed many comments. It's the same as has many comments, except for it's going to embed the comments in the post document so that whenever it is put into our Mongo database, you're going to go ahead and see the post itself, and then inside of that, you're going to have the comments listed out. Over here in comments, you'll see that we have embedded in post to go ahead and complete that relationship. It's a little bit different than has many, has one, belongs to, those sorts of things which we're used to talking about in relationships because we're saying embeds in. And then, of course, I set up the comment fields as well. It's the same type of deal. If you go over to now my post controller, controllers, I like to think of them as routers in a way. I realize they are not doing the routing. That is actually handled in our routes Ruby file, but they are a router in the fact that they are grabbing the information from our models, which we just saw, and they're also meshing it with the views. So here we're going to have any of our actions defined. Index, show, new, create, edit, destroy. All of these actions are defined in here. And it's going to go ahead and do any kind of redirects or any instances of a class. They're all going to be combined in our controller. So here, index. I think this is new to Ruby Rails peoples as far as in PHP or Python, we did not have this. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about how the default of an index def is basically to list out all of that thing. So if we're inside of the post controller as we are now, the index is going to go ahead and list out all of the posts. The index of the comments, as you can go ahead and assume, are going to list out all of the comments, and so on and so forth into everything. That's what the index does, creates a list. Here we're using action, active record is usually what Rails is set up with. Mongoid, the gem, allows me to use active record syntax to talk to my Mongo database. Usually in Mongo, you would say something like db, well, I'll go ahead and type it. You would say something like db.posts.find. We could even add a pretty to that if we want to see it beautifully. And that would go ahead and return back a list of your posts. Well, in Active Record, all you simply do is say post.all. So up here, I went ahead and I edited, yeah, that's definitely a word, post.all, and I added .sort in order to list it in the opposite direction. I guess descendingly would be the proper word I'm looking for there. So I went ahead and I say, hey, sort it by its created date, and -1, of course, is descendingly, and then 1 is ascendingly. So that's a little bit about indexes in Rails and mongoid syntax as well. God bless mongoid. It has been an amazing, amazing time working with it. So I was really relieved when I started working with it and it wasn't a nightmare. As I said before, all of my posts are using Ajax. So when I make a new post, when I render the new post form, when I destroy a post, all these things are loading in with Ajax. And let me show you a little bit of how that's working. This herb is the view, so html.herb is how we use Rails inside of our markup. So this percentage less than, greater than, that is the start of a Rails line. And the equals, some of them have equals, some of them don't, is a way of saying print. So here I'm wanting to print something from this line, whereas here I just need to open up a for each loop in Rails. So it's a little unruly at first, but you do get used to looking at the syntax of Rails this way. The line that I had to edit up here, this is creating a link, which is also very wonderful about Rails because it says link to, so it's very intuitive. Link to new post path, and then we're go ahead and saying remote right here is hashrocket true. Do is the same as saying for in other languages. Basically, it's going ahead and starting a function. So it's like for this entire stuff, go ahead and do this stuff, and then you end your for loop or your function. So remote true is a way of telling Rails that you want to use its built-in AJAX, its unobtrusive AJAX, which in Rails it uses the REST architecture, R-E-S-T, which I'm not going to go into because it is, I started researching REST and it's very, very, very extensive. I will say, however, that it essentially hunts down the documents with the proper naming conventions and executes those documents. So, for instance, whenever I go and destroy something, right here, this is my delete link. So this entire chunk right here from the end to the link is my link. And then inside of that, I have my image, which is the whale image, and then the word delete, which I'm going to flip over here. It's creating this on the page. So whenever that is clicked, then I have remote of true. So that's going ahead and saying, hey, I want to use your unobtrusive AJAX Rails. And it looks for then something called destroy.js.erb. If you go ahead and you click on that link and you don't have a destroy.js.erb file, like I do up here, it's going to yell at you and give you all sorts of errors because it doesn't have what it needs to execute. So if you're interested in how this works behind the scenes more, I would suggest researching REST Rails architecture. But that's all I'll say for now as far as how that works. So it's looking for destroy, and it's going to go ahead and run my JavaScript, which is just simply saying the section with that post ID, go ahead and hide it. And I'm doing that so that it's a little bit of user feedback. With the delay of 300 milliseconds and then removing it, I am allowing them to see that it's being removed. So it's kind of nice to know that you did just actually delete that and didn't just pop out of nowhere. So also I wanted to mention that inside of this JS file, we don't have the anonymous function, the DOM ready function surrounding the entire document, because at this point, whenever this is called, whenever the delink button is pressed, basically, and it goes and hunts down this destroy.js file, the DOM is obviously already ready. We don't need to say, hey, make sure the DOM is ready before you run this code. So that is why we can go ahead and just start coding our JavaScript in here. I'm going to go ahead and give you an example real quick of what it looks like without. If I go into my edit here, it loads it into here, and it reloaded this page. You'll notice again, I'm going to go ahead and go back and do that again. I'll go into edit, and it reloads the page with the edit. If I go back and I press the new post button, you'll notice it didn't load in a new page. It just said, hey form, go ahead and display, and then whenever we make a new post and we say create a post, it also again uses AJAX. It doesn't reload here. It just inserts it at the very top and hides the form. Then same thing when I delete it. It's going to go ahead and make sure I want to delete it and then take it away. That is all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this and have a marvelous day.